I should also mention another part of the WTF programming, is that so Lucy has been our playwright, most years, and then we've sort of passed the baton to someone else. But then Lucy, and she's a special lady, dear friend of mine. She was like, her vision for this program is that it isn't some like fancy New York playwright that comes in and writes the play, but it's actually someone who lives in the area who writes the play, right? That's what we're aiming for.
Right.
And so we have created a playwriting group of folks who, I think this is one of my greatest accomplishments, but one summer I just got to like pick folks that I had met throughout the years that I had a feeling were playwrights, but maybe had never written a play before. And I just was like, hey, you don't really know what to expect out of this, but want to hang out with us for a weekend, and maybe by the end you'll be a playwright. And they were all like, yeah, for sure. And so they spent it was like an intensive weekend with Lucy, and it was like a group of 10, and we had a sharing at the end of all the things they had written over the course of, I think maybe it was a week, maybe it wasn't just a weekend. And then basically from that group, there were a lot of folks who were like, well, you got me. I'm a playwright.
Wow.
And we were all like, well, yeah, And again, I feel similarly about playwriting as I do with acting, that it's like, if you have the desire to do it, then you're probably going to be great at it, and if you're open to learning and soaking it up, then pursue it, do it. And so we have this group now who's been meeting for the last 2 years every month, and some of them have written full-length plays at this point. And 2 years ago were not playwrights, had never written a play before. And I really think Lucy is pretty special in terms of how she facilitates, and she is really good about being because they trust her because she's a playwright, right? She kind of has that reputation in our community.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, okay, whatever Lucy says about plays, sure. And she's good, she knows what she's talking about. And so then they bring in pages that we read, and we bring in some actors, and it's this really, it's a pretty spiritual event each month, because people are super vulnerable, and so we basically now we're created a batch of playwrights that can write these big spectacles in the future. And it doesn't have to be Lucy, and it can be folks that we've that have seasoned over a couple of years and are ready to do something like that. So I think that is also born out of the same ethos, which is just that theater belongs to everyone. Over the years, people had kind of just revealed themselves to me as poets, or they were people that were just very verbose and interesting to speak to, just you can people who clearly had a story inside of them. and maybe would be open to hey, this is how you might put that story into a play. These are the kind of rules of writing a play. You want to have this line break, and don't write the stage directions just willy-nilly, put them in some parentheses, those kinds of things. And then about really, and then they were able to get into how do you make something dramatically interesting and not just, so yeah.
So how do you get people going on the actual writing process? What do? You say, first of all, we'll work on a story outline. Is that what you do?
I think Lucy is more here's a prompt, write something in response to it. Like one of my favorite prompts I've seen her give, and this is just like in the workshop space, and then hopefully people will kind of like expand upon it. But she was like, her prompt is, if rage could speak, what would it say? And then she has people write a monologue. And then she says, okay, now if joy could speak, what would it say? And then we'll kind of go around and people will sort of perform those as monologues. And then we will kind of go into like directing with them, and we'll be like, okay, this is sort of like a classic workshop that we've done, is that then after someone like shares like their gorgeous piece of writing, I find anything anyone writes beautiful. I just love when people express themselves. But we'll say, okay, this is great. This, there's this line where you repeated like, oh, or something like that. When she says that line, everyone else in the room, you're going to echo her. You're all going to say, oh, whatever. Just come up with things on the spot after her. Okay, let's do it again, and suddenly you're like putting them in the seat of the playwright. And so then you get to say afterwards, you say, what do you think of that? Did that tell your story, or would you want to adjust something about your writing? Or would you want to adjust something about how we performed it? And so then they get to kind of be the maker of their own story. And I really think that then people are like, okay, great, I want to be a playwright. I think it's an easy kind of like thing to just like clue people into whatever story you have to tell. You've got a group here who wants to help you like tell it well. So tell us.